to all my dreamers. We are back on DCTV with another episode and a very special guest. We have Shelby here. Everyone say what's up to Shelby.
What's up, y'all?
So we are very, very excited to have Shelby on here today. You know, there's been plenty of things that I've done with Shelby in the past few years. But for those who do not know Shelby, she's going to give you a quick introduction of herself. And we're going to dive right into, of course, what we are talking about on season 1 today. Embracing the journey in this afternoon or this evening. You guys see it's a little darker today in our recording studio. But this evening, we're going to be talking about Shelby's journey and how she got to where she is today. So Shelby, thank you for joining us. It's very nice to have you. And can you just quickly introduce yourself to the DreamClouds audience? Let the dreamers know who you are.
The dreamers, love that. Okay, so my name is Shelby D Smith, like she mentioned earlier. First and foremost, I'm a believer. So I attribute everything that I do to God, and it's for God. That's number one. Number two, I'm a journalist. So I am currently, my 9 to 5 is a social media manager at the US Sun. It's a UK-based publication that just branched out into the US in 2020. So it's kind of a startup in the US, but really known in the UK. You would have saw it if you watched the Meg and Harry documentary. Yes. You actually would have saw it because they were one of the tabloids that got sued. Okay. But they're trying to rebrand themselves in the US. So I love being a part of that process as a social media manager in New York. And then my 5 to 9 is a freelance writer and content creator. So my most consistent gigs are with Birdie, which is a beauty publication, and Essence Girls United. Essence Girls United is the Gen Z publication of Essence. Everybody knows Essence for Black women since 1970. Okay. And then content creator, I usually do UGC creation, so that's user generated content. And for brands, the posts that you see on their feeds and in their stories, I'll create that as like the human in the background using the product. So it's not me on camera. It's not me as the influencer trying to sell the product. It's literally me making the content for the brands. So it's another revenue stream with content. So that's my 5 to 9. And then outside of that, I am the co-founder and co-owner of Different Shades & Co., which is a coffee cart, mobile espresso cart, I should say. And so it's based all over NJ, PA, and NYC. So that will be debuting in around late March, I want to say. And really that project is more of a service project. Like me and my co-founder, we love coffee and we have a passion to eradicate poverty. So we were just praying about how we can combine those like passions essentially. And eventually it will be a workforce development program in which we're employing the homeless, not with the coffee cart, but within the shop. But the cart is the start of it. And housing them as well and teaching them how to franchise a coffee shop if they want to, for those that are interested in the culinary arts. And then growing from there so that they can have property and not just learn a skill set. So that's the end goal with that, but it's starting as a coffee cart. So if you need us for your events starting in the late spring, let us know. You said short introduction, but that was kind of long.
Well, it's everything you're doing, and we couldn't leave anything out, right? So we had to get into all those details, which is great because honestly, you've already mentioned some things that I definitely want to tap into as far as, you know, just getting into your passions. But you might say like, wow, she's doing a lot and she's here and she's there. And we're going to talk about that because even as dreamers, as entrepreneurs for many of us, right? Wealth chasers, what we are doing, we always talk about those multiple streams of income. It's usually never, right, just a 9 to 5. You might have seen some other episodes that I've done so far. You might realize that someone else's 5 to 9 or 24/7 job is being a mother, right? There's some who, as you may notice, a common thing that's going to be in my speakers, our faith, our ministry, you know, within our work, but also even outside, just being in this world, how we actually put our faith first and being a believer. So all of these things that kind of balance into our lives, and it's like, well, this is what we're doing. It's one, it makes us who we are, right? It gives us something to have purpose in and to live for. So I'm glad that you told them everything that you're interested in and everything that you're doing now, because that is important. And as we're talking about embracing the journey, we're going to talk about how you even planted seeds into every single one of them, right? And to where it's gotten. So can you just run us back to, your entrepreneurial journey a bit? I was just actually wearing Sunday? Yes, Sunday, my sis Start the Business sweater. I still be rocking that, right? So we taking it back. It's a little bit of a throwback, right? Back to when, and I believe that was SDS is what you're calling it for your initials, right?
Mm-hmm.
So your brand been as SDS, the products that you were selling been, and even the message that you were promoting been, to how you got here today. So if you can, we want to hear more about your story. That might have been like 2020 or so.
Yeah.
So 3 years later, and then of course, as we always continue to mention, in the midst of the pandemic, how has your journey been so far for you now to be in the freelancing position that you're in, the co-founder, co-owner position you're in? But going back to 2020 when you started with SDS, selling sweaters and notebooks and planners.
I often forget about that part of my life because I feel like 2020 was such a whirlwind for everyone.
Yes,
it was just an opportunity for everybody to kind of soak in what they were passionate about, reflect on what they wanted to do moving forward, and just explore every creative skill set that they had.
Right.
And that's exactly what I did. So the reason I don't really remember it now is because it was really a project.
Okay.
So SDS Media is right now my freelance and content creation company. But before I was doing freelance writing and UGC content, I was selling the sweaters, notebooks, pads, all of that. And my brand has always been for the administrator, for the goal chaser, just a woman that's out here trying to pursue purpose. And that's what's driving her, God-driven purpose, I should say. And that's what I wanted my products to kind of remind women to do and be.
Yes.
So that's why I was like, sis, start the business.
Right.
And graced for it was the slogan on the mugs. And that literally came, all of that, I think I developed the slogans, made the website, learned how to do drop shipping within a matter of like 6 or so months. Okay. It was really just like on the fly type of thing that I knew was going to be a project. Like I never thought, how people are like, oh, I'm building this for 6, 20, 30, 40 years down the line. Yes. I always felt like it was something that the Lord was using to anchor me in skill sets and not necessarily, what my lifelong was going to be. Right. I do see it developing into certain collaborations in the future. But I know that's going to come once I build myself first as a brand. But the Lord just wanted me to explore that first. Okay. So I would even encourage anybody listening, like, not every project that you do has to have a long-term goal of you trying to build generational wealth through it. Like some projects are literally for you to develop a skill set, and then the Lord may bring it back 30 years down the line and you have that skill set and the resources, and now you can move and accelerate with it instead of trying to learn how to do everything from the beginning. So I think that's what SDS Media originally was. And I mean, the process of transitioning into that is transitioning into what I am now is a whole story in itself. But that's what you were referring to, what SDS Media was. So thank you for allowing me to evolve, and staying with me through that. Oh, I appreciate that.
Like you said, it might be a throwback, but I still get compliments on that sweater when I wear it. It's so DreamClouds, I feel like, as well. Like, it was just the alignment. I was like, sis, start the business. I'm like, yes, that is the message as well. But you mentioned some great things that I really liked for you to say was not everything that we tap into, right, has that long term. It's not the generational wealth building stream of income that we're looking at, right? And I consider for many of us, like for myself, that was my corporate job, right? So it's like why I went to school to study supply chain, to know in the end, I mean, I started DreamClouds while I was still in school, to know in the end that, hey, I actually want to be a business consultant and a career coach. A lot of these projects I did take for DreamClouds and one and the same. So right now, DreamClouds is rebranding. A lot more focused on lead generations, helping the clients actually get clients, building a portfolio of contractors and a networking and network enhancement portfolio, really. But I remember starting DreamClouds and I was set it on myself, like you said, as a project. I made it a thing for myself to say, for every service that I want DreamClouds to offer through a contractor or through myself, I'm first going to practice with myself on my own business. So when it came down to marketing, I'm like, well, then I'm going to do my own marketing, and I'm going to get on Canva, and I'm going to create my own content, and I'm going to do this. And then it came down to like, oh, okay, business card designs, brochure designs. So I was literally like doing everything for DreamClouds and offering it to some clients on the side to make it a project, to make sure that, hey, I'm building the skills that I need. And this seems like something that's definitely valuable. And I know if I need it in my business, then more than likely there's another business that's going to need it out there. So you've made some great points in that. Everything is not something that we're going to be doing forever. It's not always long term, but realizing the seasons, right? So you guys might catch that in episode 2 with our season media Stephen, right? But realizing the season in your life and what it is that you should be called to do in that time. So I'm really glad that you mentioned that, and I do think that's a great point into that. And so we're just getting into more of, as you were already mentioning, you have so many things as far as freelancing, and then even realizing, so we get from SDS Media, right, into now doing more freelancing. She's at Essence, y'all. I know y'all heard that, right? So that's a big deal. That is a major opportunity. It's such a blessing to be at. And then also even having the opportunity to co-found and co-own a coffee shop right now. You see, and notice where she sees the vision to it, right? She notices right now it's starting off with something that's mobile, right? Go to go wherever you need, and then already seeing what is the mission and the vision behind it. And to hear how you've combined so many of your passions and so many of your interests into what you're doing now. That is the question that I have for you is, what are some of the steps you've taken, or how do you feel as though you've realized a lot of your passions and a lot of your interests, and how you were able to make them align into the things that you're doing today, so that you knew what to focus on and what to prioritize on and how you wanted to execute on it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I feel like I'm rediscovering and discovering new passions as I work on different projects. So I feel like in college, in high school, really, we're kind of set up to know what we want to do, where we want to be, have these 5-year, 10-year plans. And it doesn't give us space to evolve, because in order to become a master in one thing, it takes so much time and dedication and discipline. So if you have multiple passions, you can't really explore those or exert all that energy to different things. And what I'm grateful for is that even on the path, because for my journey, I thought journalism was going to be that for me. Like, okay, I'm graduating with this. I'm going to be the next Oprah by doing this, this, and that.
Right.
But the Lord saw me early on and was like, this is not the only thing you want to do. Like, this is what you feel like you have to do, because this is what society has told you is the right way to do things. But there's more in you that I want you to explore.
Right.
So the Lord had to take me out of being so laser focused on just being a journalist and have me get fired, have me, what was it? I had to quit my job before I got fired at my last one, because I reverted back to old habits of saying laser focus. And in those off seasons, it was really a time for me to explore different things, which is where the SDS Media and the shirts and notebooks and kits came out of. And from that, I discovered new passions. And I feel like the Lord just brought me through a season, and not like a 2-month, 3-month season. This was like 2-3 years of discovering what exactly I am supposed to be doing long term through the freelance gigs, the projects, the people that I met, the conferences, the prophetic words that I was getting, like compiling all of that and dissecting what exactly I'm supposed to be doing long term. So it was really like a 3-year process. And I can honestly say I'm just now, like December of 2022, felt confident in what I'm supposed to be doing. Like, I couldn't have gave you that explanation of the freelance writer, 9-to-5 social media manager, and then coffee shop owner as like philanthropist work 2 years ago. Like, it wasn't until last year in December that the Lord was like, okay, you went through the season, you passed the test. You know what you want to do. You try things, you hated them. You try things, you love them.
Right.
This is, you have the words. This is exactly what you're supposed to be doing, and
Right.
this is what I want you to focus on. So it really wasn't until the top of this year, end of last year, that I really had that focus on what I'm supposed to be doing, because I did go through 3 years of just pursuing passions.
Right. Right.
Mhm.
And that's good. That's definitely good. I think that, for many of us within these past 2 to 3 years, I do say the pandemic, it comes with its pros and its cons. Right. And for a lot of us, we've had that opportunity within the 2 to 3 years to hopefully find some time, or just realize that life is short and some things are not always guaranteed. So being more intentional, even if you didn't always feel like you had the time, but being more intentional and trying to pour into your interests and self-reflect and do things for yourself a little bit more. And as you said, this has been a journey for many of us. So I'm with you in saying that season of my life lately, that like literally this past year was one season in and of itself, and then 2 years before that was a whole nother season, and then I still feel like there's somewhere in the midst of combining those years, and it was still another season. And it means a lot, right, as far as to who we are today and getting that clarity. I do think that is something that is definitely happening this year. What I like to hear, a lot more clarity and vision for some people, and being able to realize what it is that we want to focus on, and how, like, even DreamClouds and the rebranding and the shifting, of really starting to identify a little bit more clearly purpose, and what we're doing here, right? So you've made some good points, and even just talking about in these, say, past 2 to 3 years, right? It's a season. We know it's been hard for many people, but it brings us here today. And so I say that considering that season, those 2 to 3 years you must have been through, and leading up to today, that's your journey, right? And we're here talking about embrace the journey, really understanding the process of what you've been through. You've already highlighted some key things as far as what that season was for you. Self-reflection, getting to know yourself better, getting to tap into some of your passions and interests so that you can have a clear vision as to what you want to do. But what would you say, embracing the journey means to you? Like, what have you realized in these past couple of years that you're like, okay, this is why I've been through this, yes, to understand what you should be doing with your life, but also realizing, okay, this is what the journey was meant for, as far as the lessons that were learned, or as far as you already mentioned, the skills that you've picked up on. How did you realize you started to embrace the journey? Because many of us, when it gets rocky, we don't embrace, right? You've mentioned, you talked about, like, even, the things that you tried and you didn't like, and realized to myself, okay, then that just means it's not for me and I'm not going to do it again. And you identified the things you loved. So how did you embrace that journey, even through the things that you hated, or the downs that you might have gone through, right? So quitting your job, getting fired from another job, all of those things are the journey.
Yeah. So I know it sounds terrible, but I really live in fantasy. Like, it's not the healthiest, and I feel like that's why. And then I'm also oblivious on top of that, because I'll be in my own world.
Okay.
So the things that trigger other people, like comparison, like, not saying that I don't struggle with comparison,
right.
but like comparing yourself to people on social media, not being secure in your identity, so you're chasing brands and labels and bags, instead of, taking a step back and be like, I actually can't take a trip like all these people, because I have to stack.
Right. Right.
Like, I live in my own world, and my mother would always tell me that. And I feel like because I've shielded myself from these things, it's been me versus me. Like, I'm just able to kind of process things, walk in obedience, do things without, like, the stain of other people's approval or guidance, which is abnormal. Like, when I talk to my friends about their journeys and things that they process through, they'll tell me the same things that I just told you. Like, oh, well, I had to delete social media because, I was comparing myself to this person. I'm like, why would that make you want to, like, compare yourself to them? Like, it's just an oblivious type of mindset that I've had, which is like in La La Land, which can be defined as fantasy, that has kind of guarded me from being influenced by outside people in their journey.
Right.
So I think on a healthy level, I would say embracing the journey is really just going day by day.
Right.
Like, you don't need to be stuck in fantasy land and completely oblivious like I am, because that's unhealthy and that's something that therapy is getting me out of. But what I will say is that it's helped me just stay the course.
Okay.
Like, it's helped me not want to do things like other people or take on jobs like somebody else would have taken on a job,
Right.
or chase security because I have this or that goal.
Right.
It's just helped me stay in my own lane. So I think on a practical and healthy level, embracing your journey is really just staying in your own lane day to day, going, being obedient to what the Lord is saying to do that day, not worrying about the next day or the next month or the next year. Really just staying the course and being and trusting your faith.
Right.
Like, you have to trust your faith. And that's something that I struggled with a lot. Like, before 2020, like 2019, 2018, when I was just rededicating my life to Christ, it was a lot of, I believe in God, but I have to do this because I don't believe you all the way. So just in case you fail, let me, put a plan B under there.
Right.
Because I'm a super planner. But I believe, I hope I've grown this. I know I've grown this. Is trusting your faith. So knowing that I believe it's Matthew 6, like if he dresses the lilies, how mindful is he of you?
Right.
And that's something that really stained me, because I'm like, yes, you do this, but do you really care for us like that? Like, do you really protect the day to day? Do I have to take matters into my own hands?
Right.
And that's kind of what my mentality was before. But I feel like if I just go day by day, I'm walking in obedience, things don't look like they're going to turn out the way they're going to, but they eventually always do. And in that is where I could grow in confidence in my faith and know, like, okay, I actually believe that the Lord will anchor me in whatever he's telling me to do on a day to day, even if it sounds crazy, looks crazy, doesn't look like it's going to manifest the way it will manifest. Just trust that he's got you covered. So that's really what embracing the journey is for me. Like, again, I'm going to repeat it, taking it day by day. And I don't want to say it like that's something that just happens. Like, I just wake up one day and I take it day by day. I'm oblivious all the time, so I take it day by day. No, that's something you have to practice.
Yes.
Like, I feel like it's been years, like, even before committing myself to Christ, it was just different nuances that I felt were heavenly, but I didn't really process it as, God saying this or trying to do that.
Right.
But just slowing down and not folding under the pressures of society or humanity.
Right.
So embracing your journey. And I believe it talks about that in Romans 14, like your own personal convictions, following your own convictions, your own journey. Yeah.
That's good. That's very good.
I hope I wasn't all over the place.
No, I think that you tapped on some really great things that are relatable for so many of us. And you're right. That's something that I think all of us many of us, right? So some of us, they a little more free will. I'm much like you, analysis paralysis. I like to plan and overanalyze. And I'm like, I trust you, God, but I'm still jotting everything down and calculating the risk and doing all those things, trying to mitigate what may be able to happen. Definitely an overthinker, right? So I like to really think out all my options before taking it in. So you can even probably imagine before quitting a corporate job, just like the thoughts at hand of saying, like, God, I trust you, but at the same time, knowing that a journey is going to come with its downs, and it's like, so what am I going to do in those moments? But you also touched upon what I really liked, even in social media, right? Mm-hmm. Realizing that you weren't alone, and that even though you may think you're living in la la land and like everything else and everybody, and you're just like, well, is it just me? What's going on? And you talk to your friends, you talk to your family. I've deleted my social media plenty of times, just as a detox to say, let me step away. Because yes, we do get in these moments where like, how are they vacationing so often? Like, what do you mean they're married already? Like, God, what am I doing? Like, all these things that you look at and you're like, I pray for this, I work for this, I go so hard. But then you realize later on that, okay, God, I see what you're trying to teach me. In the midst of this process, I see what what I needed to work on myself. And I think a big thing that I've heard while you were speaking is really not just embracing the journey, but embracing your authentic self.
Yeah.
Right. So really getting to understand who you are. We talked about that as far as just getting to work into so many of your passions and interests and how to align those for yourself and your vision. But also just feeling confident in yourself to realize like, okay, here's where I am in life, and without comparing myself, to everyone else and what everything else is going on, being comfortable with where you are and being confident in who you are, right? So can you talk a little bit about, embracing your authentic self and how you feel about this topic, and realizing what are some of the practices that you had to do, maybe not only just deleting, Instagram or whatever other social media, but really being able to say, hey, this is what I did to make sure that I was loving myself and that I took on this journey as who I am, and as no one else in this world.
Yeah, embracing your authentic self is such like a hot topic for me because, and I feel like for everyone who has multiple passions, because you're always put into a box when you have certain passions.
Yes.
So as you know from my social media, I'm really into politics. Like like it's just something that comes natural. So
not so much for me.
Like advocacy, politics, it's just something that I just have a natural interest in. So with that, it was like, okay, you can't post about that, but then have a TikTok about being a beauty influencer. All my content, like content creation, UGC content, is beauty, lifestyle, wellness brands.
Right.
So it's the Nair, it's the it's different wax things, just to keep up with hygiene and femininity.
Right.
That's like you can't partner those. Like you can't want to be like a political bae, but then want to be a wellness bae.
Right.
It's like two society and humans like polar opposites because we've just been trained to do certain things a certain way. So it was really hard for me to kind of figure out who I was because of that. And I'm like, dang, I want to do this, but I want to do that, but I can't do that if I want to do this because that's not going to look right. So it was really just analyzing what made me feel like I couldn't do this because of that.
Right.
So it was really just sitting there analyzing, like, why do I feel like I can't be my authentic self when I have all of these things I'm genuinely interested in?
Right, absolutely.
And it's like when you discuss them with other people, they try to knock your credibility because you're interested in other things.
Right.
And it's like, okay, like for example, with journalism, naturally you expect journalists, especially on your talent, to, have super bubbly personalities, like be the ones that walk into the room and just, captivate everyone. I'm not like that. Like I'm very much like I like being social with people that I'm comfortable with, but it takes me a while to get comfortable with people. And to be, like my true self with them. Like I'm comfortable with you, which is why I can just chat with you. But if I'm just meeting people, I'm not that one to step into the room and try and get all the attention and be the spotlight. And my professor in college, she was like, I don't see you being a journalist because you don't do that. And it's like those boxes have really sat with me and made me feel like I'm not going to be good in this field or I can't be this person because of, how society boxes in. It was also this Twitter post. It was like, we're going to see in our lifetime a politician have their own makeup palette. It was like a politician. It was like only in our lifetime will we see a politician have their own makeup palette.
That is true.
And I'm like, what's wrong with that? Like, you can't be a politician that likes to get cute.
Right.
Or even seeing the basketball coaches, how, they'll be decked out from head to toe, like the WNBA basketball coach, I forget her name, who comes to every game like flashy. And she looks good, but it's like, why you need to settle down, tone it down. If you're a head women's basketball coach, like you are drawing all the attention to yourself.
Right.
It's like what made us feel like we have to box each other in? And I gave all those examples to say that I've struggled with embracing my authentic self because I have so many passions. Right. Yet I know society won't accept them for all of who I am, and make me choose one lane to go down. In order to be successful. And that's what you see with politics. Like, you can't be a politician if you like, what was that? It was the Rochester mayor that was twerking on a beach. Not saying that was acceptable. But I'm saying you have
they
to
don't allow you to live your life.
Exactly.
They think that you're human.
Yes. you have to maintain an image, a brand of one thing. It's like, okay, 3 words to define yourself. That's it. What if there's more than 3 words to define me?
Right.
But it's just us having a hard time processing all of who humans are that make us dim our authenticity, which is my struggle. So it's a journey. I don't even know if I have an answer as to how I'm embracing my authenticity by just thinking about those things on a day-to-day, and just being conscious of when I'm boxing myself in to fit for the preference of other people, because I know they won't be able to digest all that I enjoy and all that I am.
Yes.
And it's not just me who's like that. I'm sure everybody has multiple passions. I'm positive everybody has multiple passions, but they're forced to kind of dim it down to, fit it in a corporate or in the church or, in certain lifestyles or job sectors. So my encouragement to individuals that are listening to this today would really just be conscious of that. Like, be conscious of when you are dimming or eliminating or erasing some of your passions because you don't believe the person you're communicating to will digest all of who you are. That's unhealthy, especially if you're in a comfortable space with them. But if it's like, you meet them for the first time as your hiring manager, give them the 3 words. Okay? Give them the 3 words. Don't be talking about you're creative, entrepreneur, soloist, psalmist. Don't do all of that the first introduction, please. But I'm saying, as you go in a relationship with people, don't be conscious of when you're dimming yourself. Yes. And that's how you can embrace your authenticity on a day-to-day. Back to the original statement, it's a process. Everything is a process. This life is a journey. So just don't get upset if you don't even master that within 2 months or even 2 years. Like, every day, just remind yourself to embrace who you are, all of who you are.
Absolutely. You made some really good points, and we do all struggle with that in a season of our lives, right? Or seasons, like you said, life is a journey. It's journeys within journeys, to be quite honest. There's so many journeys within it. And when I think back on my 2 things, I would say, like, one, passionate, of course, about my career, and always knowing, even in business, the professionalism side. And I was always that one of making sure speaking. But I remember growing up and saying, like, I love tattoos. I like flashy, y'all. I'm not gonna lie. I like going shopping for jewelry. Yes. Like, I like expensive taste things. I'll just put that out there. I like to change my hair up on the day. Y'all gonna watch these episodes and be like, oh, she switched it up again. Yes, I did. And those are the things that I remember before, really even having my own business. I was so bent on saying I want to be an entrepreneur because I want to be myself. I was so afraid of the box of corporate that I was like, I don't fit in there. And I thought, like, yeah, I can excel, but I would have had to cover and mask myself as far as, like, not just my skills and abilities, but who I really was and what I was interested in. So I was still the one that, as many tattoos as I have, not like I'm doing it on purpose today, but in a corporate career, I was covering them all. And of course, that's what we were taught. That was the lessons. And even going into interviews and being, like, really conscious of what hairstyle do I want to go into, so they don't think, like, I'd switch my hair color to purple and green and blue, but I wouldn't do that in an interview or really at any job. My last one was a lot more open. But really being conscious to say, like, even though that feels like my authentic self, I have to mask that in a way to say, okay, I want to succeed, I want to excel, and I didn't want them to close me out. So then I realized only pulling out certain parts of realizing that at a certain point, right, it was me just saying, I'm too afraid to see, to have the world reject me. in a sense of not really understanding that open doors that were for me, right? And where I needed to be, I was honestly not even given that opportunity to say, you never know the kind of culture barriers you might break when being yourself and being there. So I did think about that oftentimes and realized, well, one, that is a part of why I decided to be an entrepreneur. And I think that was fitting in itself, right? To realize I wanted the career that allowed me to feel like, hey, I'm just branching out and being myself. But I also thought about ministry, right? So even for myself growing up, and this is the joke that my mom and I, my sister, we laugh about all the time, because I love God. I grew up in the church. It has always been, right, number one passion for me. And that relationship has always been there. But I remember growing up, and I was probably like very young. I might even been in high school, maybe, at extent, early high school, or whatever the case may be. And it was like, yeah, well, you know, being saved. And it's like my mom's asking me, like, are you saved? And she's a pastor. And I'm like, well, Mom, I don't really want to be saved yet. And she's like, what? And I'm like, oh, because like I don't want to drop all the things that I love to do. And like being saved sounds so boring. I'm like, I don't want to do that. I'm still having fun. I'm young, you know, like why would I want to go ahead and be saved thinking like God wasn't going to accept me for who I was? Like he didn't already know who I am. Like, yeah, exactly. So it was like, you know, I was so, like we said, kind of just putting ourselves in this box of saying, like, how can I, like, I had to question myself, how can I like these things and think, like, they're growing up and I'm growing up in the church and they're like, she's going to be in ministry. Yeah. She's going to be on that pulpit. She's going to be preaching. She's going to be prophesying. And I was like, no. No, do you know me? Do you know what I'm doing? And then it was kind of a realization to say, like, but why can't you be interested in the things that you are interested in and still preach the word of God? Yeah. You know, really get out there. Why can't you love these things? Why can't you love tattoos and still be a professional? Yeah. You know, those kind of things where we had to honestly, like you said, break barriers within ourselves. At some point, it's just about, y'all don't hear me say this probably every episode, getting comfortable, being uncomfortable. But at some point, I had to let myself be uncomfortable and saying, you know what? No, I'm just going to do it anyway. And embracing it and really walking through it and realizing then, like I said, last corporate job, I was like, I'm just going to do it. Green hair, I'm just gonna go in with it and do that, and then getting compliments in the corporate job, and everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, wow, I love it." I'm like, so you're hiding yourself sometimes, and it's like you don't realize how much the world needs that authentic you to even break barriers for other people and allow them to open up and see the new dynamics and what they can do. And this world is changing. So yeah, we are expecting politics nowadays to have their own makeup brand, and we're gonna see them at the NBA games, and they're gonna be enjoying their time. Right. Obama, I always loved him because I was like, stop it, living his life, him and Michelle make it look good because they realized, like, listen, and they did have to, of course, cover, right? While being in the office, there are a lot of things that they did have to cover and hide because the world is the world. They don't always like to accept authentic selves. But also realizing, like, no, Michelle was bad. Yeah. She's gonna come out on their fly. She's gonna look better than the rest of the first ladies, you know? She's gonna give a message that was passionate to her because it's her authentic self. And these things have broken barriers for so many of us now as we push forward trying to get through things where we realize, wow, I can be at a high level position and still be who I am today. And it's not just impacting me, but it's impacting so many more people, right? Yeah. So I really, really like that lesson. And even what you said, it is a process. It's a day-to-day thing. I mean, I like to say that I grew up confident, but there are still things that I have to tap into myself and say, like, okay, like, you know, let that loose. Let that free, you know, and know your crowd, know your audience, know what to bring out to who, but definitely walking in who you are and embracing it. Embracing you is a part of embracing the journey. Right. Yeah. So that was some really good things that you mentioned right there. Yeah. And thinking of what you piggybacking off of what you were just saying is when you brought up the Obamas, I feel like in the beginning, they had to make work their identity. Yes. But once they got more comfortable with like the people, the politics, them knowing that people were going to hate them just because they were them. Right. They were just like, you know what? Bump all of this. Right. I might as well be authentic. I might as well be myself. Right. Then you got Tan Suit Obama coming out doing what needs to be done. You know? So I feel like for a lot of us, we kind of have to make, or not have to, but forced to make work our identity, which is what kind of hides us from being our authentic selves, because we have to box ourselves into what the brand of this type of individual is.
And that's so unhealthy. And I think that's why so many people are breaking away from corporate
Yes.
and desiring to go the entrepreneurial route because they want to be their authentic selves, but the corporate space doesn't allow that because of branding,
Right.
control,
Right.
maintaining an image. So I think corporate is learning that,
Yes.
and now they're trying to come out with these initiatives where
Right.
people can be more creative and be
Right.
themselves and come out with these resource groups, which I appreciate. But there's always going to be that freedom that comes with just doing your own thing, that corporate doesn't provide for people who don't want to stay in that
Right.
box.
Right.
And I don't think everybody needs to come out of that box. I think a lot of people, they're okay with the 3 words that describe them.
Right.
Like that's
Right.
that's really fine.
Right.
If that's your
Absolutely.
niche, that's your niche.
Absolutely.
If you have no other desires or passions outside of that, so be it. We need people like that.
Exactly.
We don't need people who are all over the place.
The ones like us that want to be all over here.
Right.
Really
Right.
back in a little bit, right?
Right. So I don't want to condemn one over the other because
Right.
I felt like that's what it could have came off as earlier. But it's really just about embracing who you are.
Right.
So yeah.
Absolutely. And I like what you said, and even, getting into the Obamas and saying like they first had to learn and they had to do, but then realizing at some point, like, the hate is not hate. Right?
Yeah.
Like, they gonna talk about me anyway. That's kind of the thing.
Yes.
I think just even, on Sunday, and a few of us in my church were talking, and we were like noticing like Jesus been hated all his life. So at the end of it, when that happens, you probably know you're doing something right. Yeah. Honestly, like realizing that there are going to be things that are talked about as you create barriers, as you do things that people are not everyone's going to be there as your number one supporter. Not everyone's going to understand and encourage what you're doing. And so even having to understand that so that you can embrace your authentic self, so that it doesn't sway you in certain ways of noticing, like, Jesus was not swayed. He knew what it was. So he came in ministering in ways that no one was ministering before, ministering to people that no one was ministering to before. And it was like a realization though of I'm called to do this, and so when we start to understand, hey, I'm called to be here, I'm called to do this, you own it, right? And so then the rest of the things that are talked about, I mean, I can think for the Obamas, I know plenty of times there has been a stress load to say, like, I can't please these people. Like, I'm trying my best. And then at some point to say, but you know what? Because I'm trying my best, because I'm doing what I'm called to do, and even making sure that it was back into their passion. Having to realize, okay, I'm not just here for them. I mean, I am as presidency, right? First lady, they were here for us. But also understanding that they had an agenda of their own as well. So they couldn't always just say, well, I'm going to do how everyone else needs to do. That wouldn't be their authentic self. They had to be able to come in and do what they needed and break barriers as they have. So that was some great points once again. But I did think about that as you were saying. And I'm like, the haters are going to hate. And that's oftentimes you can take as a sign to say, hey, I'm probably doing something right. I might be on the right path because they're talking about me a lot more and they're not liking everything. But then you also see in the same time your followers will be growing, right? And you'll see the impact that you're making. So it really does go back and forth. It goes in both hands, right?
Yeah.
So that's really good. And so even as we just begin to wrap up this call a bit, I wanted to know, for many of us who are trying to tap into so many of our passions, right? So even for myself now, I'm still thinking, I still ask myself daily, like I was just saying earlier, I'm going to be definitely a lot more intentional. Not all of our passions is a stream of income, guys, right? So of course, as DreamClouds, we're going to encourage you, take your passions, take your interests, and if you can, make a hustle out of it, make a career out of it. But some things are really even just for the mental health. Some things are for the joy of living, right? And understanding your behalf. And I was like to myself, like, I'm going to be intentional that hardworking, that's who I am. I love working, honestly. I mean, as long as it's a job I enjoy. But I that's been me. Like, I was always that one in school to be like, I can't wait to get out of school because I want a job. I want to work. I like this professional life. I want to do that. And I was so focused on it that I took more and more time away from the other things that I do love. So even hearing what you're doing now and how you're getting to balance a lot of these things, a lot of your interests, in life, it may take a lot of your time and it may be a pretty busy and strong workload. But what is your advice to, look, even myself, but many of us who are listening who want to be able to say, I'm not just my 9 to 5 or my 5 to 9 or whatever the case may be. How do you feel as though you can advise people on finding that balance for themselves and tapping into their interests? It may all be different for us, but I think that there are definitely some techniques, that we can use to say, okay, I'm going to be intentional about balancing a few of my interests in my life this year and making this journey definitely worth it.
Yeah. So balance is something that I wouldn't even say I have. Like, if I'm being completely honest, I'm not gonna come on here and be like, yeah, you gotta meditate in the morning, then you gotta take a shower and no. Like, I'll literally be in the stall at work crying. Like, just crying. And I think I posted on my story, like, I cry like 8 times a day. like not even being funny. But at the end of the day, I know these things are seasonal.
Yes.
So I think that's what I always tell them. There are going to be seasons where I'm probably going to be exhausted.
Right.
And I'm okay with that because there are seasons where I have done nothing. Literally, my parents realized I needed to rest, supplemented me in everything that I did, rent, car note. Well, they made me DoorDash with a car note, but they paid a little bit, food, like all of that. They were like, figure out what you want to do, and we'll handle that.
Right.
So everything is just seasonal. So I don't have the capacity to give 100% to everything that I'm a part of, which is what often we define as balance. I don't even have the capacity to do that. But I feel like I'm successful at the things that I do because everything is so seasonal. Like, I literally go with the wind of God. If I have to take a break from something for that season, work on something, and then that something can now run on its own to where I can go back and work on the thing that the Lord told me to cut off before, which has happened over and over again. That's balance to me. Like, just going with the wind. So when people ask me, because I get that question all the time about, like, how do you do this? How do you do that? How are you managing so much? And it's really just going with the wind. Like, there will be some kids. I think when I started my job, I told Essence I need a month off so I can master how to do my job, so that when I get home from work, I'm not too exhausted to work on stories because they'll already be in a regime. And if you're in God ordained spaces, they're going to give you the leeway to do that because the Lord told you to do it. So she and my editor, she was like, mental health comes first. I'll talk to you in October. That's literally the end of it. Literally the end of it. So it's really just going with the wind of God, going with the waves of God, and not being afraid of what that could come with. And like you said, being comfortable with being uncomfortable. I've had to be comfortable with instability, instability, and not in the sense of there aren't constants in my life. Like, I'll always have a job. I'll always have income. I'll always pay my car note out. It's just the ways in which these things will happen will not always be the same. But that's also the lifestyle I'm graced for. Not everybody is graced for that lifestyle.
That is true.
Like, not everybody is graced for that lifestyle. And I think that's something we also have to stop projecting on people, that everybody's the same and can handle the same and is graced for the same. Because I have friends that if I gave them my lifestyle, they couldn't handle it. But I have friends like my friend Yvonne, who's a nurse. I could not do a 12-hour shift caring to infants. That's what she does as a pediatric nurse or infant nurse or whatever. She's graced for that. I am not. Like, at all. So some people are graced to do like that type of lifestyle, that constant lifestyle, the job. I know what I'm doing when I get off of work. I know what will happen when I get to work for the rest of my life. I just wasn't graced for that lifestyle, and I have to embrace that. So that goes back to the authenticity piece. That goes back to the day-to-day piece. That goes back to embracing your journey and reflecting on what exactly it is you're supposed to be doing, and not comparing yourself to other people and what they're doing. So I think, to answer your question of how to manage, how to cope, how to handle, it's really just knowing what you're graced for and just going with the wind and waves of God, and not being afraid of what that comes with.
Absolutely. No, definitely. I think that even hearing you answer, I think that was the answer I needed in saying, like realizing that not everything will get, like balancing it, understands that not everything that you have on your plate will always get 100% of you. There are seasons for it, right? So even understanding that for you, you might have realized I need a month to just take off and focus on other things, right? For some of us, it's like maybe not that time off, but understanding on certain days of the week, my job might have gotten 50% and this other one got my 100% and this one only got 20%, and understanding, okay, this is how I have to manage these things in my life. And they do come with the exhausted days, right? I mean, I remember starting school back up last semester and my idea was like, what did I just jump myself into? Because I was thinking like, I can balance it all and then hop again, and I realized, and to the point that for the last 5 weeks I was like, actually I have to drop my last class because mental health does matter, and I won't be able to do anything if my mental health is not in the right order. And so understanding, like you said, going with the flow and going with the wind, and most importantly, I really like what you said, but not being afraid of what that may come with. Taking that in, right? So I had to tell myself, embrace the journey. Like once I started thinking about it, I'm like, what is the big deal in taking one class off right quick? So you can have 5 weeks to breathe and just let yourself think and focus on the other things that do need 100% of you right now, whether it's your mental health. For at that time, it was Afro Advantage, and I was like, we can't do both. So I was like giving that my all, right? But just realizing, okay, you know what? I had to tell myself, embrace the journey. Are you still going to get out of school what you were looking to get, even if it takes another extra month or 2 or 3 or whatever the case may be? Realizing like, okay, is that fine for you? And once you make that decision, standing firm in it a bit, right? And just, I think it goes back to what you were even saying in the very beginning. We plan so much, but it's really building that trust in God to understand like, okay, I'm going to make this decision and I trust him that, in the end, things will still work out. I'll still be where I need to be. Some of us, like this generation and beyond, just get so impatient and we need to do it now. And we think we have to move so quickly on everything. And sometimes it's that quick pace mindset that doesn't allow us to embrace the journey. It's like we're just moving, but we don't even get to really analyze and think about what it is we've been through and what it is we're learning, and where this break might have actually taught us another lesson and been good. So thank you once again, Shelby. This was really good. I think we've gotten plenty of great points out of this, but we did realize at the end of the day, right, that we're all human.
Yes.
And so we're balancing a lot of things, but we do realize that, it's not uncommon to have to take a step back and encourage yourself to still embrace your authentic self, right? We realize that we do get tired, and honestly, tears are fine. I've noticed I've cried a lot more in this season too, and it was just like, first of all, a lot of these tears are, it's watering the seeds. It's getting us through. It's really helping us to break out. But you do understand, like, hey, with the ups and the downs of things, you start to realize, hopefully, as the listeners, that you're not alone, right? That these are the moments that are a part of the journey. The questions, the concerns, right? The high hopes, but then also going through certain things that were unexpected and having to take the shifts and the turns of life and so much more. All of this is really, honestly, embracing the journey. But I think one of the biggest things that we learned in today is being yourself. Really, really just being yourself through the journey, embracing that so that you can allow yourself to make the mistakes. You can allow yourself to try new things and just branch out, right? And allow yourself to feel free in what it is you're doing. So I'm really, really thankful for all of the messages you've brought here today and the things that you've let myself and even our listeners learn. And so before we leave, can you just let them know, some of your handles, where they can find you on? Definitely let them know, where they can be reading your articles and so much more, so that they can stay in contact with you and see what else you're going to be doing within this new season that we're walking into.
Amen. So you can follow me on Instagram at Shelbs D Smith, SHELBS D and then Smith, Smith. I usually post all of my articles to my story, so you will see them there. And I think that's all I really need to plug. I usually have my TikTok there, like I'll upload my TikTok there. If you're not into beauty, lifestyle, wellness content, my TikTok will probably not interest you. But if it does, it's the same handle, just with 2 S's. And yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you for trusting my voice. I appreciate that. And I hope that everybody that listened today was able to take something from my journey and apply it to theirs. So yeah, thank you for having me again.
Of course. Well, all right, dreamers, that is the end of this episode. We want to thank you for plugging in. Definitely still, stay connected with Shelby. If this is your first time watching DCTV, make sure to subscribe, stay connected with DreamClouds. You can find us on Instagram at DreamClouds ENT. You can find us through LinkedIn if you're on more professional side, DreamClouds Enterprise. Or you can follow myself, Janelle Settle, many more. We'll make sure that all of our information is in the bio. And until next time, with love, vision, and pursuit, we will talk to you guys later.